Chapter 11 Selling Medicine in the Market. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Not long after, a young man hobbled over, supporting another disciple. "Hey, this is my buddy, Sun Ku. Help Sun Ku get settled over here." The scattered disciples gathered around, curious to see the guy actually helping someone. Lin Yi checked Sun Ku's sprain thoroughly. It wasn't too bad, but it had been ignored and was starting to swell. He pulled out a bottle of medicine, ready to apply it. "When I put this on, it's gonna sting. Just tough it out for about an hour, and the pain will start to fade. The swelling should go down after that too." Sun Ku, who'd been suffering all day, perked up at the thought of relief. "Go for it, man. I can handle it." The moment the medicine hit, Sun Ku yelped, breaking out in a cold sweat. Some of the onlookers shook their heads. One disciple started in, "Total scammer. He's just using Yaofeng's name. The sect's gonna come down hard on him for damaging their reputation like this." Even some disciples who'd been optimistic earlier looked disappointed. Sun Ku's friend watched Sun Ku's face contort in pain, clearly worried. He glanced at Lin Yi, hoping for some reassurance. Lin Yi got it. Seeing his friend in pain was rough. He cut to the chase. "Don't worry. Like I said, just give it a little while." But the onlookers got even more worked up. "This is supposed to help, not make it worse. He's torturing this kid. He's a fake, hiding behind Yaofeng's name. We gotta report him to the disciplinary board. Get rid of this parasite in the sect." More and more people chimed in, and Lin Yi, wanting to shut down the drama, flashed his token. "Take a good look, people." The scene went silent. Some had words on the tip of their tongues, swallowed them down, faces turning red from holding back. After letting things simmer down for a bit, Lin Yi said, "Sun Ku, try standing up and moving around." His friend moved to help, but Lin Yi waved him off. Sun Ku slowly got to his feet, took a hesitant step, then another. A look of excitement spread across his face. "It really doesn't hurt anymore. Seriously, it's gone." They both quickly thanked Lin Yi. "Thanks, man." "Yeah, thanks a lot." "No problem. Actually, I should thank you for trusting me." Lin Yi pulled out another bottle of medicine and handed it to Sun Ku. "These pills are great for sprains. They'll get you back to 100%. He gave him some instructions on how to use them. Sun Ku gratefully accepted the bottle. "How much do I owe you?" Lin Yi grinned. "You're my first customer. It's on the house." Sun Ku and his friend were speechless, just repeating their thanks. The onlookers were finally convinced and swarmed Lin Yi. They were all eager to say hello, trying to make a good impression. Lin Yi smiled and nodded to them all. From then on, Lin Yi became a regular in the trading area. He learned a ton, becoming more knowledgeable about medicine. He was finally making progress. And, of course, he was earning a good chunk of change. Lin Yi couldn't help but think of Lu Ren. Now he understood him, and he was about to follow the same path. One day, as Lin Yi was packing up his stall to head back to Yaofeng, an elder stopped him. Lin Yi looked the old man over. His skin was sallow, he seemed drained, his pupils were wide, and his expression was anxious. Figuring he was having a medical problem, Lin Yi asked, "Can I help you, elder?" "Young man, I'm an elder in the sect. I've heard about what you've been doing lately, and I'm hoping you can help me out. If you can fix my health problems, I'm willing to pay whatever it takes. Tell me what's going on first, Elder Duan, and then I'll see if I can help." "It started over 9 years ago." After explaining, Elder Duan looked at Lin Yi expectantly. Without treatment, he really didn't have much time left. Basically, he and some members of his sect went into the mountains looking for treasure. He actually found something valuable, but someone else noticed and ambushed him. He ended up killing the guy, but he had been poisoned. He didn't feel bad at first, so he didn't think much of it, but recently his health had been spiraling downhill. The 9 years ago thing rang a bell. That was the year he joined the sect. What a coincidence. Lin Yi didn't really want to get involved in this kind of thing. Who knew if the guy was telling the truth? But Elder Duan looked like he was at death's door, and considering someone went missing from the sect, they must have investigated. Lin Yi said, I just became a pharmacist, Elder Duan. I'll have to do some research first. I'll give you an answer tomorrow. Hearing that Lin Yi wasn't turning him down, Elder Duan was ecstatic. I appreciate it, young man. Lin Yi went back to Yao Feng, opened the book of formulas that Fei had left him, and started searching. He was almost at the end, close to giving up hope, when he found something that might work. He spotted a pill called Huanyuan pill that could solve the problem, but it was risky. It was either life or death. The formula called for all sorts of herbs, and they were all rare. 7 of them couldn't be found on Herb Peak. Since he'd never left the mountain since joining Juqin Gate, he decided to use this as an opportunity to learn more about herbs in the wild. After memorizing the 7 herbs, Lin Yi decided to set out the next day. He told Elder Duan that there was a pill that might work. Since it was complicated to make and he didn't have experience, it would take a while. He promised to let him know when it was ready. Lin Yi didn't tell Elder Duan about his plan to gather the herbs himself, playing it safe. The monkey incident back when he was 5 had left a lasting impression. With a bamboo basket on his back, Lin Yi left the mountain through a rarely used path, embarking on his first solo adventure. Chapter 12 Valley. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At that moment, in a valley, a young man, Lin Yi, clutched a freshly picked herb, barely containing his excitement. It was his 3rd find after being out for over a week. Those first few days had felt like searching for a needle in a haystack, but he'd finally figured out where these medicinal herbs like to grow in the mountains. His medicine basket was nearly full, packed with herbs not even cultivated back at Medicine Peak. It was the thrill of the hunt, the joy of a bountiful harvest. Lin Yi felt confident he could collect everything he needed in the next few days. He carefully added the new herb to his basket, hoisted it onto his back, and continued deeper into the jungle. Spotting fresh tracks from some large predator, Lin Yi slowed, his senses heightened. This was clearly big cat country, and he needed to be careful. Years of taking strength-enhancing pills had made him fitter than most, but he hadn't practiced any real combat in all his time at Medicine Peak. He had basically no fighting skills. A face-off with a wild animal could be a real problem. Lin Yi stopped, thinking hard. The promise of rare herbs ahead was tempting, but it could come at a deadly price. He started to retrace his steps when a deafening roar ripped through the air, sending shivers down his spine. Whatever it was headed his way. Lin Yi scanned his surroundings, scrambling to find a place to hide. The sounds grew louder, the unmistakable sounds of a fight. Soon, 2 massive creatures burst into view, a brown bear and a giant tiger, locked in a brutal battle, hidden from sight. Lin Yi trembled. The tiger was covered in blood, losing more with every passing moment, clearly weakening. But the bear wasn't faring much better. Its left front leg hung limp, throwing off its balance and diminishing its attack. This was the most vicious fight Lin Yi had ever witnessed. To think, this whole mountain range was teeming with animals like these. A shiver ran down his spine as he imagined how he'd been wandering around oblivious for days. He definitely needed to learn some basic self-defense when he got back, just in case. Though terrified, he was also mesmerized by the raw power and ferocity of the fight. The battle raged on, the tiger losing blood, the bear struggling with its injury, neither willing to yield. Even when they could barely stand, they clawed and bit, determined to kill the other. Finally, they locked jaws, neither willing to release their grip. Time seemed to slow as both the tiger and the bear went still, locked in their death grip. Lin Yi remained hidden, not daring to make a sound. Only after confirming there were no signs of life did he slowly approach the fallen beasts. Here they were, 2 apex predators, now tragically dead, both taken down in a fight to the death. Every part of these animals was valuable. If he could haul them out of the mountains, he could make a fortune. But the treasures before him were just too much to carry. It was frustrating, but he wasn't about to let it all go to waste. At the very least, he deserved a good meal. Lin Yi carefully carved out the choice cuts of meat, headed to a nearby stream to wash them, gathered firewood, and prepared a feast of tiger and bear barbecue. The key to great barbecue was heat control, and for Lin Yi, a master of fire, that was a piece of cake. As the meat sizzled, the smell was intoxicating. Lin Yi had an idea. He reached for his pills, grinding some into a powder to sprinkle over the meat. He rubbed it in, again and again, until the meat was fully seasoned. He brought the roasted tiger meat to his nose, inhaling deeply, his face radiating delight. He took a bite, and the flavor exploded in his mouth, rich, savory, and utterly delicious. It was the best thing he'd ever tasted. An hour later, he was still munching away, but his stomach had had enough. It was sad that so much tiger and bear meat was left behind, but there was nothing he could do. After a short rest, Lin Yi continued on his way. The route he had abandoned earlier, due to the threat of wild animals, was now safe. Where the beasts had battled all the way, it was now flat and safe. Soon he came to a small valley. Lin Yi stared in amazement. The place was stunning, a riot of colorful flowers, butterflies dancing in the air, small animals frolicking about, all bathed in the warm sunlight. It was a paradise, a place where he could easily imagine spending the rest of his days. It took a while before he shook himself out of his reverie and began to look around. The valley was filled with medicinal herbs, many he'd never seen at Medicine Peak. He began to identify them one by one, losing himself in the task, forgetting the time. It took Lin Yi 2 full days to identify the herbs in the small valley. He also gathered a large number of seeds, knowing this would greatly expand the variety back at Medicine Peak. More importantly, he had found 2 more of the target herbs he needed, bringing his total up to 5, with only 2 left to find. He jumped for joy. A snake slithered into his path. Lin Yi had always been afraid of snakes. It was an instinctive reaction. As it moved away, he took a closer look and felt a surge of excitement. There, next to the snake, grew a silver snake plant, one of the target herbs. But his heart began to pound again. The snake was still right there. What should he do? Giving up wasn't an option. He might never find another silver snake plant again. Ideas raced through his mind, but he discarded them all. As a pharmacist, Lin Yi came up with a plan. What if he could use a drug to incapacitate it? He consulted his pharmacopoeia and found a recipe for anesthesia powder, which could temporarily paralyze. Fortunately, he found all the necessary herbs in the valley. After gathering the supplies and applying the powder, Lin Yi managed to grab the silver snake grass. That left only one medicinal material, golden sun grass, which thrived in sunny, exposed locations. Lin Yi stood on a high point, scanning the landscape for the golden sun grass. However, 6 days had passed since Lin Yi left the valley. 10 days had passed, and it had been almost a month since he left the mountain gate. If Elder Duan did not receive treatment in time, even if he found Jin, Yang Chao, taking Huanyuan pill is useless. Lin Yi looked at the structure of a deep cave curiously and was so surprised. He looked down and saw that it was bottomless. Lin Yi's legs and feet couldn't help but tremble, but right there at this time, a grass on the cliff attracted Lin Yi's attention. It looked a bit like golden sun grass. When he identified it carefully, Lin Yi was happy and confirmed that it was undoubtedly golden sun grass. It takes work to get it. The golden sun grass was dozens of meters below the cliff. It was extremely difficult and dangerous to pick. Lin Yi found a rope and a long time passed when everything was ready. Lin Yi crawled down the rope with difficulty, only halfway through, and was already panting from exhaustion. When he arrived at the golden sun grass, he was already exhausted, but Lin Yi had forgotten his fatigue, picked off the golden sun grass and put it in his pocket. Suddenly, the rope as he fell down, Lin Yi also fell down with him. There was only one thought in his mind: it's over. Chapter 14 Chi Training Level 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Guided by past experience, he carefully channeled spiritual energy into his meridians. As soon as the energy touched one meridian, all the spiritual energy from the other 35 rushed towards it. Lin Yi panicked, momentarily losing his focus but quickly regaining control. He guided the massive surge of energy in slowly, and a wave of pain, 10 times worse than before, crashed over him. Luckily, he had been through this before and gritted his teeth, holding on. It was incredible, though, that his meridians didn't rupture under such an intense influx. Instead, the spiritual energy was still working to clear the blockages. The process was excruciating, and even as the energy flowed in, progress was slow, far more difficult than with any previous meridian. Lin Yi tried to speed things up, but the searing pain almost made him scream, forcing him to abandon the risky move. He began to understand the difference between the lesser and greater Zhoutian cycles. The lesser Zhoutian was like a small stream, while the greater Zhoutian was like 35 streams merging into a major river, connecting to the main channel. Now, he wondered what would happen once the 36th meridian was finally unblocked. The thought made him both excited and nervous, sensing that he was just a hair's breadth away from clearing the entire meridian. Suddenly, there was a soft pop, and the surrounding spiritual energy poured in uncontrollably, but there was no pain. Instead, his whole body felt incredibly comfortable, like a fish released into a vast lake, swimming freely. Lin Yi's body became like a bottomless pit, greedily absorbing spiritual energy and channeling it into his dantian. Initially, his dantian was just a tiny speck. As the spiritual energy flooded in, it began to grow, constantly compressing the energy to store more. At the same time, the energy gathered in his dantian began to nourish every cell in his body, creating a numb, tingling sensation. When no more spiritual energy could be absorbed, his dantian was the size of a lake. Lin Yi clenched his fists, feeling an endless surge of strength. Before his training, crushing an ant would have been easier said than done. Now, was this the power of Qi training level 1? The gap between cultivators and ordinary people was immense. Like night and day, he also felt like his lifespan had increased. If gods existed, they'd live as long as the heavens and the earth, their brilliance matching the sun and moon. Lin Yi believed that his lifespan would continue to grow as he advanced, not necessarily immortal, but certainly longer than most. Lin Yi carefully acclimated himself to his newfound power. He worried that if he interacted with others now, he might accidentally hurt them, so he focused on controlling his strength. He began to understand the transformative feeling of becoming a cultivator, stabilizing his foundation and adapting to the changes. Time flew by unnoticed as Lin Yi lost himself in the process, enjoying the thrill of cultivation. Once he felt stable, he didn't hesitate. He seized the opportunity and began his assault on Qi training level 2. They say the first step is always the hardest. With his previous experience, this time was surprisingly smooth. The first meridian on the second level was cleared quickly. Perhaps the previous pain had toughened him up, because Lin Yi seemed relatively at ease. It seemed that as long as he persevered, there was no shortcut to success, only unwavering dedication. Gradually, Lin Yi systematically cleared each meridian. Soon, he'd break through to the second level. Observing the meridians, he noticed that those corresponding to the second level were noticeably wider than those on the first, requiring even more spiritual energy. The final meridian would likely be subjected to a massive influx. Forewarned was forearmed, so Lin Yi steeled himself for what was coming. Before long, Lin Yi's face contorted in pain, his brow furrowed. He'd underestimated the final meridian. The pain was excruciating, even for him. Cold sweat poured from his forehead as his body felt like it was being sliced by 1,000 knives, wave after wave. His body began to tremble, his hands clenched, his nails digging into his flesh, but he didn't even notice. He'd anticipated it, but not the heart-wrenching intensity. The pain reached the limits of his endurance, blurring his consciousness. If he continued like this, he'd fail. Failure wasn't just disappointing, the consequences were dire, and Lin Yi couldn't bear them. Suddenly, with a click, he broke through to the second level. Spiritual energy flooded in, but at that moment, Lin Yi collapsed, unconscious. His technique continued to run automatically, drawing spiritual energy into his dantian. Sometime later, Lin Yi, still lying on the ground, twitched his fingers slightly and slowly woke up. The moment he regained awareness, panic gripped him. He frantically checked his body. Thankfully, he had broken through at the last second. However, he felt a gnawing hunger in his dantian. He looked inside and saw that his dantian had doubled in size, but it wasn't full. He ran his technique, but there was no more spiritual energy around to absorb. He clenched his fists, his body feeling slightly out of control. He realized that he'd been too impatient. He'd just started cultivating and was already obsessed with breaking through and gaining power. It had backfired. Slow and steady won the race. Because he'd just broken through, his body hadn't been fully nourished by spiritual energy, so it couldn't handle the new power. He understood that in the future, he needed to temper both his will and his body before attempting a breakthrough. Otherwise, he might experience a repeat of this near-fatal experience. He might not be so lucky next time. He gradually adapted to his newfound power, but there was no spiritual energy here. He couldn't stabilize his cultivation. It was time to find a way out. Although it was still dark, his newfound spiritual consciousness meant the surroundings were clear as day. This was the first time Lin Yi had really observed his surroundings. The cave was small, maybe 40 feet in diameter. Aside from a small stream, it was surrounded by bare rock walls. Looking up, even with his 50-foot range of perception, there was no sign of daylight. The cave was deep, the walls sheer. Climbing was out of the question. Looking at the stream, maybe he could follow it and find a way out, otherwise he was trapped. The narrow entrance was just big enough for him to crawl through. He constantly used his spiritual sense to scan ahead. He couldn't see the exit, but he could keep crawling forward. As long as he could move forward, there was always hope. He pushed aside the thick weeds, and the first rays of sunlight stabbed into his eyes, momentarily blinding him. Lin Yi scrambled out of the hole, stood up, and yelled, "I'm out." His pent-up emotions exploded, as the warm sun washed over his face. Closing his eyes in delight, a foul odor snapped him back to reality. He opened his eyes and saw dirt caked on his body. There was mud in the hole, but most of it was impurities that had been purged from his body after his breakthrough. He jumped into the stream to wash off, and felt refreshed. After putting on his washed and dried clothes, he looked at the golden sun grass in his hand and was filled with emotion. If he hadn't picked it, he wouldn't have fallen off the cliff. He was destined to die, but instead, he had cheated death and become a cultivator. A blessing in disguise. The golden sun grass was completely different now. It must have absorbed spiritual energy during his breakthrough, making it many times more potent. It was no longer an ordinary herb, but a true panacea. He now understood why the herbs in the mountains were ordinary. The spiritual energy was too weak to cause any real change. He also understood why he'd never heard of cultivators in these parts. This place simply wasn't conducive to cultivation. Why would a cultivator stay? Chapter 15 Return to the Clan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lin Yi turned back to eye the cave entrance. Even though nobody was around, he still wanted to hide it. It was his secret, and he wasn't about to let just anyone stumble upon it. Once that was done, he got his bearings and headed for the medicine basket. Having broken through to the Qi training stage, he moved with incredible lightness, as if free from the world's constraints. In what seemed like a blink, he was 30 feet away, leaving only a fleeting blur behind. He was quickly at the cliff face. The medicine basket was still there. He wondered how long it had been since it fell. Was Elder Duan even still alive? Or was he still waiting, medicine basket on his back, heading back to the sect? On the return trip, Lin Yi wasn't nearly as cautious. He practically strolled, the subtle pressure emanating from him enough to keep any wary creature at bay. He remembered the amazing food he'd had last time and how he still craved it. Now that he'd reached the Qi training stage, he technically didn't need to eat like regular people anymore. But that taste still lingered, making him want another feast. Reaching the foot of Medicine Peak, he used his spiritual sense to check the area around the entrance. Sure enough, Elder Duan was still there, staring at the peak, desperate for him to appear. The elder looked gaunt, his eyes glazed over, his hair a mess. He was shriveled and pale, so fragile even a light breeze could knock him over. If Lin Yi hadn't come back, he looked like he was about to kick the bucket, but Lin Yi wasn't ready to see him just yet. He could easily slip into Medicine Peak and reach the top without using the main path, avoiding Elder Duan altogether. Medicine Peak was as deserted as ever. Dust coated the bamboo house, and the medicinal herbs swayed in the breeze. But now that Lin Yi was a cultivator, those herbs didn't smell like anything to him. He headed straight for the pharmacy, ready to prepare the Huanyuan pill pronto. Elder Duan might not have much time left. Even though he was a cultivator now and didn't hold mortal life in high regard, cultivators generally avoided interfering with mortals and creating unnecessary karma. He'd made a promise. If he let Elder Duan die right in front of him, he figured it would become a stumbling block on his path. Soon, the stone door of the pharmacy creaked open, and he looked at the pill in his hand. It was the most complex thing he'd ever concocted. It also happened to be the fastest and most effective, almost perfect with no impurities. Becoming a cultivator had made making pills a breeze. Lin Yi grabbed the pills and started down the peak. The moment Elder Duan saw him, his dull eyes lit up like he'd spotted a steak after a long fast. He stared intently, afraid Lin Yi might vanish. "Nephew Lin, it's been over 3 months. How did it go? 3 months, Lin Yi thought. I was in that cave for more than 2. I got lucky breaking through to the Qi training stage. Otherwise, I would have starved. Lin Yi said, I managed. It was tough, but I pulled it off. Elder Duan couldn't hide his smile, though it looked kinda scary. Lin Yi pulled out the pill bottle and handed it over. Elder Duan, taking this pill is a gamble, life or death. If your will isn't strong enough. Elder Duan snatched the bottle. If I take it, there's still a chance. If I don't, I'm as good as dead. Nephew Lin, if I make it through this, I'll work myself to the bone for you to repay you. Lin Yi said seriously, Elder Duan, as a pharmacist, it's my duty to heal the sick. Looking at Lin Yi's face, it seemed as if he really meant it. Elder Duan was stunned. He didn't know what to say. Nephew Lin, if everyone was like you, there'd be no more wars. There'd be peace forever. Elder Duan, the last time I saw you, you said the illness would take its course in 2 months. It's been 3. How did you hold on? Elder Duan winced. You're right. I was about to give up, but I kept thinking you were still working on it, that there was still hope. So I clung to that. But this elder's got serious willpower, Lin Yi thought. Holding on like that could make the end even worse, but maybe he really can pull through. Lin Yi said apologetically, it's my fault I didn't get it done sooner. I almost killed you. Nephew Lin, I'm just grateful you agreed to help. I'd never blame you. Elder Duan, go back and take it now. And remember what I told you. Elder Duan thanked him profusely again and shuffled down a small path. Lin Yi was worried he might collapse along the way, but it wasn't his problem anymore. Lin Yi went back to Medicine Peak, dumped out the herbs in the basket, and took out all the medicine bottles. They were filled with the seeds he'd gathered in the valley. Even though they were useless to him, they were still good for medicine. He could leave some for Mr. Fei and the other Medicine Peak disciples as a small way of repaying his debt. He cleared a plot of land and scattered the seeds, sorting them carefully. Next spring, the fire of life would be reignited with the hope of flowers blossoming. After leaving the medicine field, Lin Yi made plans to carve out a cave on the peak for his retreat. In less than half a day, a spacious stone chamber appeared. The entrance was small, but inside was a space of about 15 feet long, 12 feet wide, and 9 feet high, plenty of room to stretch out. Once that was all done, he sealed the entrance and got ready to settle in for a long retreat, stabilize his cultivation, and get used to his new strength. Chapter 16 Illegal Entry into Restricted Areas. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the sun climbed, the red glow painted the medicinal peak, and its herbs eagerly soaked in the morning light, absorbing the day's most vital energy. As dusk settled, the moon rose high. The peak, almost as bright as day, glistened with dew, but despite the constant shift from sunlight to moonlight, the peak remained deserted. Something felt missing, leaving the medicinal peak looking incomplete. Then, one day, footsteps broke the silence. The sound grew louder, and soon a figure appeared on the summit, a middle-aged man, tall and imposing, with sharp, gleaming eyes, surveyed the area with a calculating gaze, a slight smirk playing on his lips. Who would have guessed? For years, Medicinal Peak has been Jukingman's forbidden zone, off-limits to all. And now, here I am, standing on it, he muttered, strolling through the peak like a king inspecting his domain. Indeed, these herbs are worth a fortune. Suddenly, he roared, Lin-E, come out. Lin-E, deep in meditation, was jolted awake by the shout. He slowly opened his eyes, his face darkening with anger. Disturbing someone in seclusion was a serious offense. It could undo all progress and even cause lasting harm. With a grim expression, Lin-E pushed open the stone door and stepped outside. He saw a middle-aged man, a stranger to him. Puzzled, he wondered who he was. The man saw Lin-E and said with a smug look, Nephew Lin, long time no see. I hope you don't mind this sudden visit. And you are? Lin-E asked. Nephew Lin, you wound me. It seems you've forgotten good old Elder Duan. Lin-E studied the man before him, noticing the remarkable transformation he had undergone in so short a time. It seemed the pill was indeed as potent as described. The formula provided by Master Fei was no ordinary concoction. Lin-E also suspected the golden sun grass played a significant role. A mere trace of that herb could work wonders on a mortal. Elder Duan confirmed this. Elder Duan, it seems your health has fully recovered. Congratulations. Thanks to you, Nephew Lin. Otherwise, I'd be pushing up daisies right now. Lin-E didn't want to waste time with pleasantries. Elder Duan, no one is allowed on Medicinal Peak without Master Fei's permission. It's a restricted area. You're breaking the rules. Elder Duan calmly surveyed the peak. Are you trying to send me packing, Nephew Lin? Elder Duan, you're putting me in a difficult position. If the sect finds out, there will be severe consequences. Elder Duan looked directly at Lin-E. Isn't Master Fei away? And besides you and me, who's going to know? If you don't tell, and I don't tell, who's the wiser? That he paused, adding with a wry smile, and who knows, maybe I'll be running Medicinal Peak before long. Lin-E had suspected as much, but still his expression soured. What exactly are you implying, Elder Duan? Oh, nothing. Just thinking out loud. Don't take it to heart. Elder Duan, if that's all, you need to leave. The rules of Medicinal Peak can't be ignored. Please head back down the mountain. Elder Duan feigned surprise. Nephew Lin, how could I forget? I came to repay my debt. Lin-E saw through the act. I've said it before, you owe your life to your own resilience. No need for thanks. Elder Duan grinned menacingly. How can I not repay such a great kindness? I vowed that if I recovered, I'd be your loyal servant, ready to work like a dog for you. With that, Elder Duan began to approach Lin-E. Lin-E stood his ground, watching Elder Duan. Why are you getting so close? Elder Duan stopped just in front of Lin-E. To repay your kindness, of course. Lin-E remained calm and composed. Elder Duan, I've said all I need to say. If there's nothing else, please leave. Elder Duan pulled a short sword from his pocket and flashed it before Lin-Yi's eyes. Lin-E observed him without flinching. Good thing I've learned a thing or two about self-defense. Otherwise, I'd be out of luck. This is Medicinal Peak. There's no one else around. Elder Duan, why the blade? Nephew Lin, how many times do I have to say it? I'm here to repay you. The words repay were heavily emphasized. Elder Duan, I saved your life. And besides, you weren't even breaking the rules, you were just defending yourself. Is this how you show your gratitude? Elder Duan didn't attack. Instead, he scrutinized Lin-Yi's calm demeanor, idly waving the dagger. The blade glinted in the sun, as if eager to taste blood. Elder Duan smiled coldly. What I said earlier, well, let's just say it was the opposite of the truth. Lin Yi felt a chill run down his spine. I'm still too naive, he thought. Elder Duan continued, if the sect finds out, there will be an investigation. He looked at Lin Yi. And you're the only one who knows about this. What do you think I should do? That he punctuated the question with a flick of the dagger. Chapter 17 Life and Death in One Thought. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Old man Duan gave Yaofeng one last look. Cousin Lin, he said, thanks for leaving me such a sweet deal. I'll make a killing selling the herbs on this peak. Then, eyes gleaming with greed, he rambled, not only will Yaofeng be mine, but as I get stronger, Jiuqing sect will be mine too. Soon, the whole shebang in the Qinyan Mountains will be taking orders from yours truly. Duan was completely lost in his delusions of grandeur. Cousin Lin, I'll pour one out for you every year from now on. Rest in peace. Lin Yi watched the elder's descent into madness. You might want to think this through, Elder Duan, he said calmly. Things can change in the blink of an eye. Duan erupted with laughter. Still thinking about slipping away? You look so calm, I wonder if you'll have that same expression when you're pushing up daisies. I can't wait to see it. He raised his dagger, aiming straight for Lin Yi's heart, certain this strike would finish him. Lin Yi watched intently. As the blade neared his chest, the dagger suddenly flew out of Duan's hand, clattering to the ground. Duan, still riding high on the certainty of victory, blinked in confusion, completely disoriented. Lin Yi kicked Duan to the ground and planted a foot on his chest. Duan finally realized the tables had turned. He struggled to get up, but couldn't move. You're so strong. Impossible. You know what they say, old man, what goes around comes around. I gave you so many chances, but you blew it. I told you your life hung by a thread, but you didn't listen. Things could have gone very differently. He continued, I saved your life, nearly lost my own in the process, and this is how you repay me? With betrayal and an attempt at silencing me? If you hadn't come looking for trouble, I wouldn't have bothered you. And you had the gall to try and steal Yaofeng. Unforgivable. A traitor like you, repaying kindness with malice, a scoundrel, through and through. I was going to leave you to the sect, but letting you breathe another second is an insult to decent people. Time to go. Panic seized Duan. He'd never imagined Lin Yi was this powerful, this far beyond his comprehension. He pleaded, Cousin Lin, no, Master Lin, please, one more chance. I'll change, I'll be your slave. I'm a sect elder. Killing an elder is a serious offense. Don't make a mistake you'll regret. Lin Yi never wanted to see this man again. His presence tainted Yaofeng. He pressed down on Duan's neck and kicked him off the peak. He didn't care where he landed. Some people just needed to be put down. As for the sect's reaction, well, he was a cultivator now. They couldn't touch him. Besides, handing a guy like this over to the sect would just prolong the inevitable. After checking Yaofeng for any damage, he returned to the stone chamber, sealed the door, and resumed his cultivation. Now no one should bother me, right? Yaofeng settled into silence once more, the medicinal herbs swaying gently in the breeze. The sun and moon traced their paths across the sky. The years slipped by, months melting into one another. A year passed, and the stone gate on Yaofeng remained sealed, as if the peak itself had closed its doors to the outside world. Chapter 18 The spiritual energy is thin, looking for clues to leave. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Time marches on, and another year has flown by. Lin Yi has been in seclusion for 2 years now. At 17, he spent a solid 12 years with the Jiuqingmen. These should be the best years of his life, but he's been stuck in that cave. Mortals only get 12 years, but for Lin Yi, it's no big deal. As long as he keeps leveling up, his lifespan will increase too. Inside the cave, a figure sat cross-legged on a stone, eyes closed, motionless. He looked completely isolated, as if nothing could touch him. Suddenly, after 2 years, he opened his eyes, frowning, a hint of sadness in their depths. He shook his head, a look of regret on his face. He'd hoped to make another breakthrough, but his aura remained at the second level of chi training. At least he'd stabilized it. On the bright side, he had pretty good control over his current power. For the past 2 years, his body has been constantly nourished by spiritual energy, and it's definitely improved. However, now he's hit a cultivation bottleneck, and his physical body has stalled, too. The spiritual energy isn't doing much anymore unless he gets a bigger influx of it through cultivation breakthroughs or some other external source. The problem is the ridiculously thin spiritual energy in this area. He's managed to steadily cultivate, but it's taken 2 years just to reach the second level of chi training. If he was at a higher level, who knows how long it would take. If he wants to break through, he needs a massive surge of spiritual energy to clear the blockages in his meridians. That's why he hasn't made any progress. Lin Yi was momentarily lost. He'd never seen another cultivator here and felt completely alone. He couldn't just sit around and wait to die, so he decided to travel and see if the outside world held the answers he needed, a place with enough spiritual energy. But before he left, he'd hit the library to get his bearings and figure out where to go. Otherwise, he'd just be wandering aimlessly. It would be even better if he could find someone in the sect to talk to. Having made up his mind, Lin Yi stood and pushed open the stone door. The 17-year-old looked great, nourished by spiritual energy. He stood over 6 feet tall, with a well-proportioned build, a handsome face, and piercing eyes. He radiated warmth and spiritual energy. The sun shone on his face, making him glow. Lin Yi glanced at the medicinal herbs on the medicine peak. They looked healthier than ever, likely absorbing the spiritual energy from his retreat. The seeds he'd planted had all sprouted and danced in the wind. Leaving Yaofeng, Lin Yi headed toward the library. "Hey, Zhuo, check it out. That's senior brother Lin Yi from Yaofeng. He became a pharmacist at 14. Zhuo looked and saw a tall, handsome figure. He said, "Senior brother Lu, are you sure? That's senior brother Lin Yi." Lu took another look. "Yeah, it's him. I can't be wrong. He gave me some medicine last time. Cleared up a problem that had been bugging me for a year." Another disciple chimed in, "Totally. That's senior brother Lin, a genius of Yaofeng and a star of the sect. Who doesn't know him?" Chua said, "Well, I don't, I guess." The others looked at him in disbelief. "When did you join the sect?" Chua replied, "Over 10 years ago." One disciple considered this. "I guess you weren't here back then, otherwise you wouldn't have missed senior brother Lin's time at the marketplace." Lu said, "Now that I think about it, junior brother Zhuo, you were probably stationed in town back then." Zhuo asked, confused, "But I've been back for a year. How come I haven't heard anyone mention this?" Lu explained, "Senior brother Lin Yi's been out of sight for over 2 years. People just forgot and stopped talking about it. Besides, you know how it is, if a Yaofeng disciple doesn't want to be seen, nobody sees them." "So, what did senior brother Lin do?" More people gathered, eager to hear the story. One disciple couldn't wait to jump in. "Senior brother Lin sold medicine at the market for the first time. I was there. I saw the whole thing." "Really? Tell us." Many disciples pressed him for details. Okay. The disciple coughed, raised his voice, straightened his back, his eyes shining with excitement. He adopted a storyteller's tone and began slowly, "Gather round, everyone, and listen closely. Let's rewind to over 2 years ago. Senior brother Lin Yi was just a 14-year-old kid, unknown to pretty much everyone in the sect. But that day, everything changed. Senior brother Lin Yi showed up in the trading area, found a spot, laid out a piece of paper, and started his medicine-selling hustle. Or should I say, his mission to save lives and heal the sick." The disciples laughed. At the time, nobody knew senior brother Lin Yi. When they saw the description at his stand, they all thought he was a con artist. The claims he was making just seemed impossible. Some disciples gasped, "No way. Really? What happened next?" Everyone leaned in. Ahem. The disciple cleared his throat again, paused for effect, and said, of course, nobody believed him. Senior brother Lin sat there alone for a while, but eventually, someone came to ask about his wares. Everyone's attention was riveted. But it wasn't smooth sailing. Other disciples warned him not to trust senior brother Lin Yi, calling him a liar, and a liar using Yao Feng's reputation. Some even threatened to report him to the Hall of Punishment. That's when senior brother Lin made his move. He paused, leaving the others hanging. Come on, what did he do? He pulled out a token. Everyone was stunned silent. Some disciples were left with their mouths open mid-sentence, faces turning red. Senior brother Lin was, in fact, a disciple of Yao Feng. Who dared argue with that? Who dared report him? Ha! Senior brother Lin Yi showing his cards like that. Total power move. Chapter 19 Sect Master. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Soon after, just like Lin Yi said, the junior disciple's son Ku was feeling no pain at all. And he recovered really fast after that. Lin Yi is a total genius. Man, I've got this nagging thing that's been bugging me for years. I gotta find a way to get him to take a look when he's got a minute. Then, a female disciple, totally smitten, shouted out, Lin Yi is not just a hottie, he's a pharmacist too. I've made up my mind, Lin Yi, I'm gonna have your baby. That cracked everyone up. Lin Yi kept walking. His senses could reach out about 50 yards, so he saw everything. He just smiled when he heard them and kept heading for the library. All of a sudden, a disciple who looked like he was in his early 20s came running up to Lin Yi. He seemed like a genuinely good guy, with a big, goofy smile on his face. He got right up to Lin Yi and asked, Are you Lin Yi? Lin Yi checked him out, nodded, and said, Yeah, what's up? The disciple, relieved it was him, grinned. Awesome. The head honcho wants to see you. Lin Yi looked confused. Who's your boss? The young man scratched his head. Oh, my bad. I was so excited, I forgot to introduce myself. Lin Yi smiled, letting him know it was no big deal. I'm Mo Sheng. I work for the sect leader. He'd like you to come with me. So, this guy's the sect leader's boy. Lin Yi realized he hadn't met the sect leader since joining. The library could wait, you don't blow off the boss. Okay, if the sect leader wants to see me, lead the way. Right this way. Lin Yi followed Mo Sheng down a winding path. Hey, Mo Sheng, Lin Yi asked, any idea what the sect leader wants? Mo Sheng shook his head. Nope, not a clue. They arrived at their destination. It was a classic 3-story building. The words Qingxiang Pavilion were written above the entrance in strong, bold strokes. The place had an old-school vibe, but the 2 stone lions out front looked totally out of place, ruining the whole effect. Lin Yi thought that was a shame. Mo Sheng led Lin Yi inside and up to a balcony on the 2nd floor. There was a table on the balcony and a tall, fit-looking middle-aged man standing next to it. Meanwhile, Lin Yi sensed someone peeking through a doorway, a girl, curiously watching him. Mo Sheng bowed to the middle-aged man. Sir, I brought Lin Yi. The middle-aged man nodded. Good, you're dismissed. Yes, sir. Mo Sheng left. The middle-aged man turned to Lin Yi, smiled, and nodded. What they say is true. A hero comes from a young age. Looks like our sect is about to hit the big time. Lin Yi hadn't expected the sect leader to lay it on so thick. He quickly bowed. Paying respects to the sect leader. Lin Yi, don't just stand there, pull up a chair. Lin Yi didn't hesitate. Thanks, master. Lin Yi noticed his seat was directly in line with the doorway where the girl had been peeking. Their eyes met through the crack. The girl blushed and took off. Sect leader Fu said, I've been wanting to meet the big shot from Yao Feng for a long time, but even as the head of this sect, I can't just barge into Yao Feng without Master Fei's say-so. That's why it's taken so long. I'm sorry to cause you trouble. Sect leader Fu smiled. Lin Yi, you don't need to be so formal. Speaking of Master Fei, you wouldn't happen to know where he is, would you? Lin Yi replied, Sect leader, I haven't seen Master Fei in 8 years, let alone know where he is. Sect leader Fu looked thoughtful. So, Master Fei came back 8 years ago, huh? After a pause, the sect leader looked at him expectantly. Lin Yi, would you be willing to become my disciple? Lin Yi thought to himself, I'd be honored, but I'm already a cultivator. If you knew that, you'd probably freak out. Looking troubled, Lin Yi said, it's a great honor to have your support. But I've always seen Master Fei as my mentor. Without his guidance, I wouldn't be where I am today. Please forgive me for declining. Sect leader Fu said, that's perfectly fine, Lin Yi. It's the sect's good fortune that you're so loyal. I know with pharmacists like you, the sect will thrive. Lin Yi thought, well, I sure hope so. I'm planning on taking a long trip. Thank you, sect leader. Sect leader Fu nodded. Since they were talking about Master Fei, Lin Yi figured he'd ask about him, since he's always been a mystery. Lin Yi asked, Sect leader, do you know anything about Master Fei? Sect leader Fu looked at Lin Yi thoughtfully, then said, I don't know much about Master Fei, and I've only met him a few times. What I know of Master Fei, I heard from the previous sect leader, and he only said 3 things. First, Master Fei is very mysterious. Second, nobody is allowed to enter Yaofeng without Master Fei's permission. Third, Master Fei is hard to find. Chapter 20 Past Events of the Sect Master. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mr. Fei is becoming more and more of an enigma. Lin Yi's biggest wish is to see him again before he leaves. That's everything I know about Mr. Fei. Thank you for the information, Master. The topic was dropped. Sect leader Fu then asked, Lin Yi, you're 17 this year, right? Yes, Sect Master, that's correct. Are you betrothed to anyone? I'm still young and unattached. Master Fu brightened. Lin Yi, you're of age to marry. It's time to think about settling down. Is there someone special in your life? Lin Yi shook his head. A man should focus on his ambitions and not be tied down by romance. I haven't given it any thought. Sect leader Fu's expression turned serious. A man needs ambition, of course, but a stable home is just as important. Your family is your anchor. Lin Yi didn't want to argue. I travel constantly and don't know when I'll return. I don't want to hold anyone back. Master Fu looked wistful. Having someone waiting for you gives you hope. No matter how dire the situation, the thought of them waiting back home gives you the strength to persevere. Lin Yi sensed Master Fu was drawing on his own experiences, pain, loss, and perhaps joy. Sect Master, did you go through something like this? Sect leader Fu nodded, as if unearthing a long-buried memory. He began to recount his past. Qing'er was my junior sister. She was the most striking person around. She commanded everyone's attention. Qing'er was a quiet person, you rarely heard her speak. Her quiet demeanor made her seem withdrawn, maybe even a little isolated. Before we got together, I watched her from afar for a long time. Back then, I didn't really understand why I had to see her every day. She was always alone. She spent all her time staring off into space. One day, Qing'er accidentally bumped into a senior sister and was slapped. She endured it silently and walked away. I'll never forget the look on her face as she left. It felt like a knife to my heart. From that moment on, I vowed to protect her. But it was tough getting close to her. Qing'er ignored me at first, but I persisted and finally got through to her. Everything changed. Maybe she felt she could trust me. From then on, she focused all her thoughts on me. She started to smile. We were happy. When I was 25, I suddenly felt I should chase bigger goals instead of focusing on romance. That night, I left in secret, slipping away into the darkness without telling her. What I didn't know was that Qing'er knew what I was planning, but she didn't try to stop me. She watched me disappear into the night. Filled with ambition, I traveled far and wide, experiencing the world and forgetting about home for a while. I saw different cultures, made friends, and visited many places. It was a successful journey. Then one day, I ran afoul of some rich jerk and had to flee for my life. I was cornered. That's when I thought of her. Despite everything I'd seen, I realized Chinger was still waiting for me, giving me strength to never give up. I managed to escape, but I was badly hurt. I didn't care. I rushed home. I had never wanted to see her so badly. The closer I got, the more excited I was. I wanted to burst in and tell her, "Chinger, I'm back." But when I arrived, I was struck by devastating news. Chinger was gone. I'd never see her again. My heart shattered. I hoped it was a nightmare, but it wasn't. Chinger was truly gone. Later, I learned she'd sat by the door every day, staring in one direction, quietly waiting, and died of a broken heart. Wasn't that the direction I left in? She knew everything but never said a word. She gave me hope when I was desperate, but I failed her and broke my promise. If I had just talked to her, told her when I'd return, wouldn't that have given Chinger something to look forward to? I hate myself for that.